It seems like, as Vincent was pointing out, that Theresa May's hands are tied now, even more so. Is that what's happening?
Well, certainly her options are narrowing. And I'm really pleased that this amendment went through because it means she has to move forward. As our colleague said, she can't kick the can down the road any longer because time is running out. And I think she hoped she might wear people down. But I mean, this has to move forward. I always said no British Prime Minister would jump off the cliff of no deal Brexit. In fact, it's the British Parliament taking back control and saying we will not approve no deal. Whether that means they go back to the people or they have a general election, I don't know. Options are narrowing, have to be chosen, have to move forward.
So you think that was what she wanted to do, Theresa May wanted to do, was just basically kick the can down the road so that time would eventually run out and that would decide for her?
Yes, I think that's clear. For me, the outcome of these two amendments is that the chances of a second referendum have, in my view, significantly increased. And I think it is also time for Europe to recognize they should actually help those in Britain who want a second referendum. And I think they could do this. And I think they should do this for two reasons. Number one, Britain is very important to the European Union. Let's not forget, just economically, Britain leaving means as if 19 other countries would leave at the same time. So it's a significant blow to the common market, which is the best thing the EU has ever done. And secondly, I think we all remember that David Cameron tried to get some more autonomy for immigration. And if the European Union would now say, look, folks, if you are having a referendum, we may give you some more autonomy over immigration, which meanwhile many other European countries want, then they could influence also the outcome.
Yeah, but Hans, the EU has been really quiet, actually, watching things unfold in the UK at the moment.
Yeah, that is true, but what I really miss here, also in this house... Well, there are a number of reasons. Number one, we have people in this house, I know them, who want Brexit. They want to get rid of the Brits because they are in the way of the United States of Europe. Britain is always the country which has common sense, which is in favor of subsidiarity, against bureaucracy, against centralization. And that is sort of a problem to a few people.
I think just very quickly pick on what Hans was saying. And this is a point that Tony Blair has also made about a second referendum when I interviewed him last month. But the whole point is that the EU is not about the free movement of people. What is the EU about?
Oh, wait a minute.
And the question is that Britain doesn't want, you know, necessarily some further powers on the migration of people. It wants to end the free movement of people.
No.
I mean, that's what Theresa May has
wait a
argued
minute.
for.
I think this is a very important distinction. I, as the ex-head of German industry, am very much in favor of the freedom of movement of people. But remember, when Poland got into the European Union, it was the German government which insisted that for 7 years there should be a restriction of Polish migrants to Germany. Okay. Tony Blair was against that. What happened is they went to Britain. So the point
I have to say,
the point I'm making is
yes,
but there's a possibility to give Britain a special deal.
They made a huge difference to our economy. But coming back to your other point, that there's not a significant majority in this House for Brexit. Yes, there are small numbers.
At the moment, not, but
absolutely
that's...
not.
So, Marion,
and I think we're afraid to be seen to interfere. I very much wanted, during the referendum, to try to persuade people to vote Remain. But I was concerned that we would be seen to interfere.
So in terms of if there were a second referendum, do you think the EU would act differently this time?
I think Europe's hands are tied to a large extent because any interference will be called out as such. Certainly, as an Irish citizen, as an Irish MEP, I would talk quietly to Irish people behind the scenes. Yes, Europe can make certain general statements. And of course, Cameron, when he came here, before he called a referendum, he did get a number of issues sorted. But before he arrived back in the UK, they were dismissed as if they were nothing. So I do think Europe could make some general statements. questions, not around free movement, and you agree with that, but around the whole issue of migration, and that might help.
Because we're talking about, you know, whether the EU would have any responsibility, bear any responsibility if
and that is it. And that point may well have to come, because ultimately on today's votes, working on the assumption now that Theresa May is going to lose next Tuesday, essentially all the other options, apart from no deal, apart from crashing out, will essentially have to mean either extending Article 50 or rescinding it, because there is not enough time in the calendar, essentially, for certainly a second referendum and almost certainly for a second referendum. Will Europe agree to that? On what terms? And what can they offer will be fascinating. But